Fishing on the shore, no longer make out any form, drift to sleep beneath the sheets. As when I was a boy, we're drawing on the shore, distant sound, dark in heaven, baby.
Nuclear Sounds is the second album by Ash, and it was released on the 5th of October 1998, but the US version was delayed until the 11th of May 1999. The Northern Irish trio had come off the back of a monstrous hit in their first album, 1977, which got to number 1 in the UK, charted pretty high all across Europe, and was universally acclaimed by critics. Things were going well for the young band as they recruited a fourth member, guitarist Charlotte Hatherley. However, after months and months and months of touring, frontman Tim Wheeler was suffering from severe exhaustion, and he has since stated that this is the reason for the album's darker tone. Arriving 2 years after Ash's first effort, Nuclear Sounds got to number 7 in the UK and charted low in Norway, Australia and Germany. It failed to crack 4 of the countries that 1977 found chart success in. This poor performance plunged the band into bankruptcy, which they wouldn't overcome for another 3 years. Reviews at the time were mixed to negative, with reviewers criticising the change in musical style, the general dark, aggressive tone that they adopted, namely. However, retrospective reviews have been a lot warmer. This album was recorded at Rockfield Studios in Wales and then Astoria Studios in London during the summer of '98. Owen Morris returned to produce it with Ash themselves mixing it, although Morris did lend them a hand when it came to that stage. As for the recording sound itself, I have very little to say. It's a heavy album and it sounds heavy, so job done. This is quite impressive because if you've heard 1977, you'll know that it's no Lionel Richie record, and yet this second album is more abrasive. If there's one improvement that Nuclear Sounds makes upon 1977, it comes in the form of Charlotte Hatherley. The dual guitar attack of Hatherley and Wheeler is glorious. It improves the sound texture considerably. Rick McMurray returns to the drum throne and does great. Mark Hamilton also returns to play the bass. Unfortunately though, Hamilton doesn't get to shine much on this record, but he still plays well, and luckily he does get a lot more room to show off in the next album, Free All Angels. Music videos were made for the tracks Jesus Says, Wild Surf and Numbskull. The Jesus Says video features Ash performing in an abandoned warehouse and is noted for its vomit-inducing camera movements. The constantly rotating camera effects were originally much more, constant, but MTV told them to cut it down a bit, and they did. A bit. I'm not sure who thought this was a good idea. Speaking of bad ideas, the Wild Surf video features some strange sci-fi lady who lives in a nightmare world full of bad computer effects. The band themselves think this video is garbage. Lastly, the Numbskull video. I can't show you it, so I've replaced it with an image of the CD cover. I can't show you it because it's full of self-mutilation, drug use, and Tim Wheeler naked, and it was banned by every music video channel it was sent out to. In conclusion, Nuclear Sounds is a really good album. The change in style is actually its greatest strength, as it shows that Ash had range and weren't prepared to make the same album over and over again. On top of that, Nuclear Sounds just commands your interest with its melodic hooks, intense driving beats, and soaring guitars. There are some softer songs too, and while they're not as good as the rockier ones, they still work and give the album diversity. A record being dark doesn't always mean that it's good, but this one feels genuine. Tim Wheeler flat out admits that they're exhausted in the excellent opening track Projects. While I can't say I've ever suffered from burnout, it goes without saying that most, well, at least many adults have, and I'm sure people will relate to this album. In spite of these strengths, there are two problems I have with Nuclear Sounds. First of all, too many of the songs are ballads. Don't get me wrong, they're good ballads, but 5 is a bit too many. Secondly, this album was influenced by 90s American bands, such as Weezer, Smashing Pumpkins, and Nada Surf. This isn't a huge issue as these bands are great. Well, 2 of them are great. Weezer are great. But I like how 1977 was influenced by 70s punk, and not by groups that hadn't even been around for that long at the time. But again, not a huge issue because it's still got trademark Ash elements, such as the swift changes in tempo and the squealing guitars. Nuclear Sounds is clearly a brilliant record, but sadly it came out at a time when the British public didn't want heavy dynamic music. Even pre-established rock bands were softening their sound for fussy British ears, as people across the nation were going crazy for god-awful girl bands and bloody-awful boy bands. Plenty of albums surpass Nuclear Sounds in sales, but this doesn't make them better. Ash didn't make as much money as these guys and these ladies, but their output that year has aged a hell of a lot better than any girl band or boy band's album that year, because good music is timeless,